It's been a while since my last video. Apologies, it is simply that I don't have a consistent upload schedule. However, with Chapter 3 of this game coming out very soon, I've come to the realization that this era of theorizing is quickly coming to an end, along with all of the theories that belong to it. So to celebrate the end of an era, I've decided to crack open the biggest mystery of the entire game, the identity of the Roaring Knight. Sham explains that for thousands of years, Lightners and Darkners lived in harmony until the Darkners were banished to live in isolation in the Dark World. This is impossible. Rather, it is generally believed that this is the retroactive history of the Card Kingdom, creating a tale about how the Lightners abandoned them due to once being toys that were played with and cherished. This then creates King's motives, as at the top of the castle, he expresses his anger towards the Lightners for banishing them to the shadows, stripping them of meaning, and accusing them of wishing to torment him and his people even further by coming back. King states the Lightners' new purpose. The entire world will be covered in darkness, with Darkners ruling over it. Lightners will be forced to live in despair, going through exactly what the Darkners went through. Jevel provides more information to us after our battle. A nightmare shall awaken in our hearts, in a shadow of the Knight's hand. But if we defeat him with violence, he says faster and stronger enemies are coming. The Knight's hand is drifting forward, and Hell's roar bubbles from the depths. It's worth noting exactly where the Card Kingdom is situated, that being in an unused classroom of the school. The fact that the Knight was able to make their first fountain here suggests one of three possible things. First, they're an employee who can access the building before or after hours. Second, they're a student. Or third, they're stealthy enough that they wouldn't easily get spotted. This raises the question of just how the Knight was able to leave the Dark World in the first place. Rouse tells us that the only way to exit the Dark World is through sealing the fountain, which suggests that the Knight possesses some other means of leaving we do not have access to. It's also possible that they never entered the Dark World in the first place, and their supposed appearance in the Card Kingdom was a direct result of the fountain's creation in and of itself, with the Knight being inserted into the story as a catalyst for great political change retroactively. However, this would downplay the Knight's strength. In Chapter 2, more information is given about the Knight. However, it mostly just confirms what we've already known before, that the Knight is the creator of the Dark World. Right away, there's no evidence that the Knight attacked Queen, as they did with King. In fact, the Knight didn't even enter the cyber world at all, which would explain why the Swatch links highlight the importance of the video, and why Queen states that she had to guess at what their fountain would lead to. But why is that? Why didn't the Knight enter the Dark World to assert their dominance? To answer that, we must examine what's shown after the fountain is sealed. Chris and Susie are both shown to be standing upright, south of the table with their backs to the door. This makes sense considering they jumped through the door into the cyber world after it had already formed. However, not only are Birdley and Noelle shown to be slumped over on the other side of the table, but also have their books laid out neatly. Had they entered the cyber world just as Chris and Susie did, their posture would reflect this, would it not? This could only suggest one thing. They had entered a computer lab before the fountain was created, and had fallen asleep. This would explain why neither can seem to recall walking into an unnaturally dark room as Chris and Susie did, but instead accept that they had been dreaming all along. In order for this to have happened, the Knight must have been hiding while Noelle and Birdley were inside. As soon as the two students fell asleep, the Knight made the fountain and bolted out. Alternatively, it is possible that the sheer act of making a fountain is what caused the two students to fall asleep. When we finally face off against her, Rouse tells her to think about the Lightners, as she's supposed to make them happy. She already believes she is doing so by wanting to spread the darkness around. See, she already believed she had enslaved the Lightners, with them worshipping the cute animals they look at on their screens. However, with the town internet offline, they are no longer able to find the comfort they once sought in the digital world. With the Knight's appearance in a fountain being made, her set goal has become clear. Spreading the darkness around the entire world is the ultimate solution to everybody's problems. One notable commonality between the two Dark Worlds is that they are both situated in rooms that have seen little to no usage recently. In the unused classroom case, it is due to age and the death of Gerson Boom. However, in a computer lab's case, it was recently unused due to the internet outage. This has put the rulers of the Dark World into vulnerable positions where the Knight's fountain presents them with a solution to their problem. Regardless of the context, this has made the rulers of the Dark World very keen on protecting the fountain and wishing to spread the darkness around the world. However, the supposed motives of the Knight according to King and Queen are entirely incompatible. The Knight cannot be on a mission to bring bliss to the entire world while simultaneously attempting to create a world in which Darkners brutally subjugate Lightners. Therefore, it seems the Knight is manipulating the rulers of each Dark World into doing their bidding at any cost, by telling them the things they want to hear. However, one thing remains clear in both instances. The Knight wants to cover the entire world in darkness. So what exactly does that bring? When the light is subsumed by shadow, earthquakes erupt the land, causing fountains to appear left and right. Every single darkener turns to stone, while the surviving lighteners must fend for themselves against the apocalypse they are destined to be annihilated by. Queen is surprised by this information. She had no idea what the roaring was and only guessed their motives based on the knight's actions. Based on the knight's full title being based around the roaring, we can determine that the knight's ultimate goal is to cause the roaring, and Jevel's dialogue corroborates this. As the knight's hand is drifting forward, the queen will return and Hell's Roar will bubble from the depths. But why is it called Hell's Roar, and what the heck is the depths? Consider the connotations that lie with the term dark fountain. It implies that when one is brought into existence, its darkness is not created, but instead drawn from somewhere like natural fountains and springs. This is reinforced by the fact that dark fountains are sometimes referred to as geysers, and they typically draw water from caves deep below. And likewise, the fountains flow from another layer of reality, which theorists call the depths. So the roaring would involve the shattering of this barrier that keeps the darkness from overtaking the light world. And this fits with what we've been shown about the roaring. The earthquakes representing the land falling apart, ready to be replaced with the darkness. The final stage of the roaring involves titans marching out from the fountains after the world has been mostly blanketed by darkness. Because of this, we can assume that the titans are coming from the depths itself, trampling the earth to make it their new home. Jevel implicitly compares the depths to hell. Another parallel to hell is the appearance of the titans themselves. The titans are depicted with horns, with a one in the center closely matching devil symbolism. From this, it stands to reason that the roaring is a parallel to the biblical apocalypse. This would align with the titans' apparent namesake. Not only were the titans of Greek mythology similarly powerful eldritch beings of great size, but they were also eventually imprisoned by the Olympians within Tartarus, a realm of darkness and despair deep below the ocean. This would also explain the presence of titan eyes carved into the walls of the cliffs. If the source of all darkness is where the titans are trapped in, then out of all the dark worlds they could have subtle influence over, the Castle Town is the likeliest candidate, as it is the most empty of all the dark worlds. With all this key information laid down, we could finally answer why Death's Holiday is the night. Death shares a similar position to the mayor in that we've never seen her face before, but unlike the mayor whose presence is acknowledged by everyone in Hometown, there are only two people in the entire game who seem to remember her, Noelle and Rudy. To begin, she was a member of Chris, Noelle, and Asriel's friend group and was Noelle's sister. She often looked out for Noelle and wouldn't be bothered to hit people if it meant protecting Noelle. This is most emphasized when it comes to her going to Noelle's defense when facing Chris's pranks. They would always go on adventures and explore the outskirts of town late at night. In Chapter 2, Noelle recalls one of those nights, where they explored the forest behind the graveyard, remembering how Death wiped her tears with Asriel's jacket. This moment is important for Noelle because she reveals an important part about her character. She didn't mind being scared if someone would comfort her. Right before this scene, she remembered Death telling her she always wanted to take her to a place like Cyber City, a place with shining lights. Given that Death was wearing Asriel's jacket, we could infer that the two are really close, as couples often swap jackets. We could also infer her interests, namely baseball, due to the fact that Death's wiffle bat is often talked about. Most importantly though, the way Death is talked about by others suggests something tragic or terrible happened to her. While Asriel is talked about positively, everyone expects him to come back soon, which is not the case with Death. The Spamton Sweepstakes ARG also suggests this, as the page leading to December yields a fake 404 page, and searching for Death yields an audio file that is named Find Her. Death isn't dead, she's missing and likely has been for years. This brings us to Noelle's room in a cyber world. Like Chris and Susie's rooms, Queen designed her room based on her search history, and one of the most notable objects in her room is a calendar in which every date reads December 25th. While most players will automatically chalk this up to Noelle being a Christmas-themed character, the actual reason for this is likely due to her repeated searches of December holiday. This is corroborated by Queen, who repeatedly calls Noelle's searches strange and sad, and in a similar fashion, the wardrobe of clothes could easily be from Noelle looking up the clothes Death used to wear in a desperate hope that someone wearing the outfit might be found. So this begs the question, what happened to Death? In the south of town, you can find a clearing in the forest which contains a bunker. The door is locked, and as you get closer, you can hear a muse_smile slowed down by exactly 666%. Since this is the exact same sound that plays when you try to use your phone in the dark world, the connection a bunker has to the dark world is undeniable. Even on a surface level, one can tell that a bunker is somehow important to the game's narrative. This brings us to Spamton's shop. If you backtrack with Noelle in tow and try to head to the shop, she'll be creeped out, but also say that being in a place like that is nostalgic, dark. What's noteworthy is that she feels the same exact way, recalling the time when she explored the forest with Des and Asriel, meaning that we know exactly why she finds Spamton's shop so nostalgic, because it reminds her of the bunker she and her friends found that night. However, Monster Kid implies that Chris did witness something scary inside the bunker. This contradicts Noelle's account, as she said they found nothing. As such, it would seem that Chris visited the bunker later, but why would they? Consider the name of the room in which the bunker is located. It's specifically called a shelter, and such a shelter would be built to protect people from extreme weather or danger. This notably includes blizzards. I don't wish to go on too much of a tangent, but in the Xbox edition of Undertale, there's a dog casino where Sans states that it's beginning to look like a blizzard, recalling a time it snowed quite badly in Snowden. Nonetheless, Asgore is still visited to give gifts to the town residents. This included Sans himself, Papyrus, a yellow kid, and an antlered girl and her big sis. Those two are heavily implied to be this world's version of Des and Noelle. So, if a young Noelle and Des were present for an especially strong snowstorm in Undertale, then it's possible that they were present for a similar event in Deltarune, though of course with more disastrous consequences. And given that Chris is repeatedly shown to be interested in exploration, it seems they would have ventured too far into the forest alongside Des, getting caught in the midst of a blizzard. In such a situation, walking back home would have seemed too dangerous of an option. Remembering the bunker in the south of town, they likely decided to go there to safety to ride out the storm. Asriel stood outside while Chris, Noelle, and Des entered the bunker, descending down a vast stairway into what they presumed would be a safe storm shelter. However, what they instead found was a thick fog as the air became darker yet darker. When they realized it wasn't fog they were walking into, it was too late as the darkness threatened to engulf them. Realizing that the rumors about the bunker were indeed true, the three tried to make a run for their lives. However, Des was too exhausted to run anymore, and realizing that there was no way the three of them could escape, she stayed behind, fighting with her wiffle bat to buy time for Chris and Noelle. They watched in horror as Des was snatched up, vanishing into the darkness. However, fearful for their lives, the two bolted up the stairs. The three kids ran as quickly as possible, through what must have seemed to be a maze of snow and frost, but they eventually made their way home, going immediately to their parents and telling them everything. After the storm cleared, Asgore conducted a search to look for Des, but after several months would come out empty-handed. This likely contributed to his removal from the police force, and Mayor Holiday likely had something to do with this. The case would eventually be closed, but Chris and Noelle would be forever linked after this moment, their shared trauma of that day never going away. The two of them would cope in their own way, and while they still hung out together at times, things would never remain the same. Over time, the two of them and their families would slowly drift apart. Noelle began repressing the memory of what happened, which would explain why she is still to this day searching for Des. However, at times she would have moments of clarity, like when she goes into the grocery store and stares into the open freezer for minutes on end. Staring into the freezer like this, she is able to mentally return to an event she has a hard time recalling. After all, in Noelle's encounter with the Pink Edison, she is shown to block out things to protect herself from painful memories. This also explains why Snowgrave caused so much tension points, and why it requires an item with a trance effect to bring it down. Seeing as she had become so distanced from the memory, it would take an immense amount of stress that could allow her to fully reconnect. So by putting Noelle into a trance, we could allow her to wake herself, reliving that painful memory and harnessing its deadly magic. But that's enough about those connected to Des and how they're processing her absence. Now back to Des herself. If she went missing in a shelter, then what happened to her? Within the code of the Chapter 1 demo, you could find an unused message.
Where am I? Hello? Anyone? Is anybody out there? Someone? Anyone? Can anyone hear me? It's dark. It's so dark here. Someone, anyone, if you can hear me, say something, please.
In Chapter 2, additional lines were added.
No one can hear me, can they? I guess not. To be honest, I'm not even sure if I can hear myself. It's so quiet here. And yet, sometimes, I swear I hear something. Something like scratching?
It should be clear that both of these unused strings are not real. They lack the proper syntax to even show up in game, contained within a lang file that isn't even accessed anywhere else. Therefore, these strings are created specifically for data miners to find. So who is this person? In a Japanese translation, they speak in a juvenile and feminine way, implying that they are most likely a young girl of some sort. This of course makes Des the most likely candidate. It's likely that these strings are echoes from Des long ago, immediately after her disappearance. She of course can't be within a shelter itself, as the authorities searched the entire town, including the bunker, so it's likely that she was taken elsewhere, but where? As stated earlier, the shelter emits the sound smile.ogg slowed down by 666% as you approach it, which implies that whatever dwells within it is not only associated with darkness, but also with demonic motifs. This fits the bill of the Titans whose demonic connections were covered previously. So from this alone, it should be obvious what happened to Des when she vanished. She entered the depths. This isn't an entirely new idea or theory, even on my channel, but it plays a key role in all of this because of its implications. More importantly, the psychological implications. See, the Titans have been stuck inside the depths for so long that it's essentially their territory. Des suddenly fall inside would be seen as an intrusion from an outsider, but more importantly, the Titans have probably been waiting for the arrival of a lightner like Des for quite a long time. In order to achieve their freedom, they need dark fountains to be made, which in turn requires a lightner to will them into existence. However, as Queen's plans in Chapter 2 imply, a lightner can potentially be manipulated in such a way that they become willing to create dark fountains at the behest of someone they otherwise would not. Thus, through several years of extreme isolations and psychological trauma, the Titans would be able to accomplish this with Des. Once she was ready, she was then led into the recently made Castletown, where she then found her way out and into Hometown so that she may dutifully serve and eventually free them through the onset of the Roaring. Not having seen her family for years, Des would have grown distance from them, and even though she initially never would have considered causing a Roaring, she would now be willing to do so after years of psychological manipulation. Des being the knight would explain her stealth and strength. For starters, she's the eldest daughter of the mayor, meaning that she likely inherited her stealth skills. This is reinforced by Noelle's use of the phrase Holiday Family Ninja style. This also accounts for the knight's strength, which Des not only inherited from her mother, but also displays regularly when frustrated in the past. Thus, it's likely that she could have easily taken on the Card Kings. Des also has a potential explanation for how the knight could lead the Card Kingdom after entering it and attacking the 4 Card Kings. If the fountains are all connected to the depths, and she survived traveling to that realm once before, then she could easily dive into the fountains in order to quickly return there. From there, she would simply bide her time until she's released once more by the Titans, returning to the light world through the shelter. However, a more likely explanation is that after jumping into the fountain to access the depths, she navigated towards the Grand Fountain to enter the Castletown, knowing full well that there's a way to return to the light world from there. Rouse might be able to detect this, but due to her stealth, she never would have been seen. She would then scout out the next location of interest and continue to cycle again. Des being the knight also explains the recurrence of baseballs in each dark world she makes. The cyber world just so happens to have a baseball for a moon, which notably contrasts with the technological theme it has. Baseballs also appear in the carnival games. Some even appear in the Card Kingdom, though to a lesser extent. As mentioned before, Des seems to have some degree in interest in baseball. If Des is the knight making fountains using her own will, then it's possible that one of her repressed interests from when she was younger could have bled through into the resulting dark world. When it comes to narrative analysis, Des is a compelling candidate because she is important to both the main cast and the players. Not only is she the missing elder sister of the main character, but she's also the former childhood friend of the protagonist, a former love interest of their older brother, and the absent daughter of the mayor. And as shown earlier, Des's name is mentioned a lot, many times in mandatory cutscenes. This means that a narrative foundation for her importance is already set, allowing her reveal as the knight to feel like a natural culmination of her character's build-up. However, the main narrative benefit is how well it would fit with the identity of the angel, something that was seemingly touched upon in her most recent mention of Des, and her first confirmed line of dialogue.
When it snows, me and my sister and everyone have a contest to make the biggest snow angel of all. We lie on the ground and spread out our arms and wave them until we get a shape just like us. I'm the smallest, even smaller than Chris. But I don't lose, because after we stand up to look, Des always tells me, "Hey look, Ellie, yours has more hidden underneath," and pushes away all the snow I couldn't reach, so I have the biggest wings of all. I wish it could snow whenever I wanted.
On the surface, this seems like another insight into Des's bond with Noelle. However, when viewed in the light of Noelle's angel connections, this memory of a contest takes on a much more symbolic meaning. The whole point of the contest is to make the biggest snow angel. Noelle always wins because her sister helps her, pushing away all the snow she couldn't to make the snow angel even bigger, revealing the potential she always had hidden underneath. This lines up well with the notion that Des has returned to act as the knight, intending to have Noelle become the angel. This fits with Noelle's closing remark. She wishes that she could make it snow whenever she wants, and this wish is eventually granted in a cyber world made by the Night, where she becomes a powerful snow mage. While we ourselves were responsible for this, she nonetheless has attained a power she wished for through sheer potential. We can even make this connection with the first obligatory mention of death. Before we even learn she is Noelle's older sister, we can learn that she has always wanted to take her someplace like Cyber City, a place with shining lights. This detail is clearly very important, and what better to bring things full circle than to reveal that the reason for this resemblance goes beyond mere coincidence, and is in fact Des' way of fulfilling her promise to Noelle after all these years they've spent apart from one another. Des may have been captured to serve as the Night, and the world she once knew may end up perishing at her hand, but through the creation of the Angel's Heaven, she can ensure that the one person she cared for the most not only survives the apocalypse, but thrives in its wake. No more workaholic mom, no more sickly dad, and no more missing sister. There, she and Noelle can finally have a fresh start. It would be as though she had never left at all. This is not only a narratively engaging plot device, but it also takes things full circle. The prophecy of the Deltarune and the Angel does not first appear in Deltarune. It makes its first appearance in Undertale. When the original prophecy is described, it said that an angel who has seen the surface will descend from above and bring freedom to those trapped below. While in Undertale, this clearly refers to monsters, in Deltarune, it refers to the Titans themselves. It's only a matter of time before the Fun Gang finally confronts the Night, and if Noelle were to learn that this villain is actually her long-lost sister who has come bearing promises of a better world, she'd find herself in the ultimate dilemma. On one hand, she knows the destruction that would reign if she accepts, but on the other hand, she could finally be rid of all the problems plaguing her life. In her little snow globe at the end of everything, the Angel can finally have everything she wants. And this is what answers perhaps the biggest question people have about the Night. Why don't they just make a million fountains and cause the roaring instantly? The answer is that they can't. Not alone. However, if two extremely determined and willed Lightners were to put their hearts and minds into a single blade and stab the ground, then this could be enough to shatter the barrier keeping the darkness away. Together, the two of them would will into existence a dark world spanning the entire Earth. Noelle could finally have the biggest wings of all.